Jason Kersey of The Athletic, and then we'll go to Joe Bettner. Jason?
Yeah. Hey, Alex. Good to see you.
Yeah.
You guys continue to add length to your defensive backfield. I know that's something that was important to you. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about the emphasis on that, especially when it comes to Key Lawrence, adding him, if you could maybe address that as well.
Yeah, I think, so much of it stems from, trying so hard at a place like in Oklahoma to not make compromises in terms of the individuals we bring in at any level of our defense. Okay, and so we can get long. That's not hard. You can get big. That's not hard. It's can you do so with checking all the boxes. So can you add some length while not hurting yourself from a athletic standpoint. And so though it's those two attributes as much as anything, and the same thing in your front. Can you get big and athletic? And there's less humans on the planet that can do each one of those things, or pardon me, combine those things. And so that's the challenge. And so as we put a class together, that's something that you're looking to do every single year, and that's probably as critical as anything, is to make sure that you continue to stack those classes one on top of the other. What I will say is we will not compromise athleticism. That's a mandate within our program. So that's the wish list is big, fast, and strong. But we will not compromise the athletic part. And so got I think several guys that check those boxes for us.
Let's go to Joe Bettner, Norman Transcript, and then Eric Bailey.
Hey, Alex, just I want to ask you, since the last time we talked, we weren't quite sure who was staying, who was leaving. Obviously, you lose up front, Ronnie Perkins. But I'm curious, just with that defensive front, with kind of the guys you add, especially at the edge rusher spot, but some of the guys you got coming back, what's the feeling with that group as you kind of start looking toward what they can develop this spring into what they'll be this fall?
Well, I think it's exciting. I think a combination of experience and some young guys that possess the attributes necessary with development. Coach Wiley in the weight room with development, they're going to have a chance to have an impact, hopefully sooner rather than later. And then have guys that have played at a fairly high level. You mentioned Nick, who's played at an elite level, certainly at times. Specific to this last season, Isaiah Thomas, trying to find, the best position for him, one for him and two for us, and then combine that with a young guy in a Reggie Grimes, who you maybe not hear his name tons this last season, but a guy that had some meaningful reps, and Brendan Walker, a Marcus Stripling, going to his third year in the program, and then you add the Ethan Downs of the world, the Clayton Smiths of the world. As well as NRK. And so I think a good combination of experience and youth, and it's the right type of youth, guys that we think that, like I said, with development can help us in a year's time. And in reference to Ronnie, I mean, that as you play better football, and you have individuals within your program with a unique skill set, and obviously it's happened, in the last 2 years, one with K9, Kenneth Murray, and then now with Ronnie, guys that possess those attributes and play at a high level, not necessarily all the way till their senior year. You're charged with replacing those guys, maybe a little bit sooner than you want to, but believe me, it's a good problem to have. And so, like I mentioned earlier with the secondary, the key is then you're stacking classes behind each one of these individuals, because it's not always a 4-year cycle as you play or get better play out of each certain individuals.
Thanks, Alex.
Eric Bailey, Tulsa World, and then Ryan Aber.
Alex, with the jumps the defense made in year 1 to year 2, despite not having spring football, how big a jump do you think this defense can make having spring drills this year? And what will it be like to have those early enrollees go through it, as well as the true freshmen that missed it last year?
Well, it's interesting because so many of those guys, as you mentioned last year, the combination of let me get my years right, the 2019 class so many of those guys were not early enrollees. And so their first true off season with us, minus the summer before their freshman year, would have been this last season. And so many of those guys, I think about a Jeremiah Cradell, I think about a Woody Washington, their first off season with us, was blown up. Marcus Stripling, a Corey Roberson. And so for several guys that, played this last year for us, really did so without a true off season at Oklahoma. And then, as you mentioned, you combine that with the 2020 class, who some of those guys were early enrollees, a DJ Graham, a Bryson Washington, guys that came in with anticipation of getting a head start that turns into no off season. And then obviously the guys we added in the fall. And so in all those respects, and certainly older guys, you never stop benefiting from off season, but specific to those younger guys. And, there's a transition when you come to college. There's a transition going obviously at any level, but playing at a level, Big 12 football, Power 5 football at a place like in Oklahoma, a transition takes place. You're never absent of transition. It's something that we've talked about as a defensive staff. It's either a transition that elevates you in a way that it's at the most basic level is setting the alarm clock and having a responsibility each, individual day, and combine that with, again, at our level, it's competing on day in and day out basis with Coach Wiley in the weight room from a development standpoint in runs and lifts. And it's not the same lift intensity that you did in high school. It's not the same, the break in between your runs has a tendency to get a whole lot shorter come college than it did in high school. And by the way, the guy you're running next to just as fast as you are compared to maybe you're 75% still won races as you trained in the high school ranks. And so in any event, you're not absent of that. A transition absolutely takes place. It's just, it may not be the appropriate one. And so, what did we lose in that way? And I give the guys a lot of credit, and obviously as a coaching staff, we're charged with, finding a way to overcome, as opposed to just chalk it up and say, well, there's nothing we could do about it. And same thing with the individual guys. And so that's just one of those things that, in a lot of ways, just, doing a little bit of makeup work right now, honestly, as you look at January into February for our guys going into this off season. But beyond that, in terms of jumps and progressions and all that, I mean the end goal here is obviously having an elite defense at Oklahoma. That's the expectation. Are we there yet? I'd be hard pressed to say that we are. On the same token, it's very difficult to always say everything progresses on a linear path. And so case in point, I'm not sure we've been anything close to being elite if you looked at through 3 or 4 games this season. And so I think that's a pretty good example in a small sample size. But I think one of the benchmarks, and I've talked about this, I maybe with you guys, I can't exactly remember, but one of the benchmarks is going to be when it's not a big story that Oklahoma's playing defense. And I don't know what moment that is going to take place, and obviously the goal is to get there. But when it becomes the expectation, I can't imagine the story is, oh my God, Oklahoma had a great offensive performance this past Saturday night. Well, I'm pretty sure that that's still a headline when the defense does a good job. And so that's and you build that. That doesn't happen in the season. That doesn't happen after a game. That's something that's certainly ongoing. And so that it is something that motivates us.
Thanks, Alex.
Sure.
Ryan Aber, the Oklahoman, and then Bob Prisbillo.
Yeah, Alex, wanted to ask you, and you touched on him when we talked to you on December signing day, but Billy Bowman, what stands out to you about his skill set as it relates to your side of the ball, and just what's that process like trying to figure out how best to utilize him?
Well, I think as you look at guys, it should be not necessarily common. I don't, because every high school does it different in terms of where they place their individual athletes. But to have an individual in your program that could help you in a number of different roles on either side of the football, in a number of different positions, that is one a real feather in his cap, obviously. But that's an exciting thing for us. I talked about it several times and saying if you identify a guy to play in your defense and say there's one position of specifically to a skill guy and say, well, there's no chance he could be a receiver. There's no possible way he could be a running back. and they didn't think highly enough of him to oh, by the way, maybe be an option quarterback. They got one of them. Keep in mind that most of the guys we recruit, they're not surrounded by. Well, Billy might be different down there at Denton Ryan, but not surrounded by guys like them. And so, in any event, when you look at a guy like that, possesses a good skill set, it's fun to watch him on film. Those are the guys that certainly you get excited about. I only talk about him as being a defensive player, and I've said the same thing to him in the recruiting process, so a guy we're excited to work with, and as comes from a tremendous program, as I mentioned, in Denton Ryan, Dad's a coach, I mentioned checking a lot of boxes. Certainly, Billy does that, not just from an athletic standpoint, but from a character standpoint and upbringing standpoint. So we're excited about him.
Appreciate it, Alex.
Sure.
Bob Prisbillo, Sooner Scoop, and then Chandler Engelbrecht.
Alex, is it too early to know if someone like Justin Harrington or Caleb Kelly will be back? And how did you keep Harrington engaged? And what do you think he learned from this last season?
Harrington's a unique case, and we knew he had a little bit of a knee when he came here, so it wasn't a complete shock that something might be done. We didn't certainly know the extent of it, so. The hope was that even if a procedure had to take place, that we'd at least have him in the 2020 season. I think just as we sit here now, the real benefit is we're able to get everything in order. I think for him, there's going to be a sense of relief. Understanding that he played on playing really good really good football in the junior college ranks on what appears to be an injury that may have even taken place, at least the initial one, all the way back to high school. And so this is a real benefit to him, and a lot of credit goes to him, because you talk about a guy that stayed fully engaged every single day. Obviously, you had the rehab aspect of things, and Caleb's a pro at rehab, unfortunately, at this point, but no, specific to Justin, just there's not a lot of guys, especially new to your program, that I would say could have been any more engaged in terms of meeting room, in terms of workouts, and so really, obviously credit goes to the medical staff in terms of his progression. So he's a guy now we expect to get at least something out of this spring, which will be critical for him. Whether it's full speed ahead or not, we'll kind of see how the coming months go. And then same thing with Caleb. Again, a pro at rehab, unfortunately, but obviously a tremendous attitude guy, and one that is expecting to have his best year. And so we'll get him healthy here at some point, able to do a lot of stuff. I mean, just already able to do a lot of stuff, both those guys. But certainly, get the pads on and all that here. About 6-7 weeks, so it'll be great for him.
Okay, Chandler Engelbrecht, OU Daily, and then John Hoover.
Hey, Alex, I just wanted to ask you really quickly about Treynorwood. After his injury before last season, what did it mean as a coach to see him come back onto the field and really blossom in his role, and then be able to have a draft stock like it is? What do you think his pro potential is?
Yeah, just a really unique, situation. You're talking about a guy that, I think it was day 1, day 2 of fall camp in 2019. It's just 2020 so many times over this last year. In 2019 fall camp, tears the ACL, misses the year. He like I just mentioned, these other individuals were be cleared to go at least at a fairly high percentage in terms of spring football. So then you're spending the 19 year kind of or 19 fall into winter, really more of a rehab than a guy, necessarily trying to enhance your skill set. You're just trying to get back to, being able to walk and then ultimately play football. And so, and then all of a sudden you have one spring practice, and then you go into the spring and summer, and he's on his own again. And then there's some things called quarantine in 2020 that come back, and so there's a 28-day stretch, I think, over the course of the early part of between July, mid-July, when we started working, and the first football game where contact tracing, and I mean, a guy coming off an injury miss 28 days in that period of time. And so anyway, it was kind of slow to go for him a little bit. Some of that was us trying to find what position we should play him at. Had played some corner in 2018, trying to find a just as the season went, between the safety spot and nickel spot, kind of moved him back and forth, and kind of has a skill set for both. It kind of came at the exact same time. We said we need to play more guys, just in that time frame of the Texas game, and really took off towards the end in terms of production and making plays in that. And so again, very unique situation for him, and obviously wish him the best of luck moving forward.
Go to John Hoover with SI Sooners, and then Brandon Drum.
Yeah, Alex, I want you to think about National Signing Day, February, what it looked like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and what you guys did today. Compare it to how the transfer portal and December signing period, obviously, has changed what February looks like. Previously, you guys were maybe waiting on the fax machine or hearing from guys or whatever in their families. And today, Lincoln said you didn't send out any letters at all.
No, we didn't. And I think obviously this one would be even more unique than in years past, and kind of, speaks to all the factors that you mentioned, including, the transfer element of things. There's still only 25 initials that you can give out. And then specific to this, recruiting class is, and we talked about it before, is, how many individuals are you willing to bring to your program that you don't know everything about, that you sight unseen type stuff, and are you willing to do those things, and some are, and sometimes you have to, and in all cases, do you know everything about those individuals? But certainly you go X number of times to a high school, X number of times to a practice, X number of times to the home. They've been on your campus multiple times, so all those things almost to the man didn't happen this year. And so one of the things for us is, as you look at it, was saying, well, if for some individuals, if we weren't completely sure on, and it might not be athletically, maybe the film says exactly what we want it to be, but if we weren't able to feel comfortable in any other respect, then it may not be the year to maybe take that chance. And so, no, it's getting more and more different. Obviously, the December period is what you're finding out is the bulk of the elite ones in the country are making decisions by that time, which makes sense because of the January enrollees, which is a unique thing. And then, the transfer portal and what that's going to look like moving forward in that, and making sure that in the end that you're bringing the right individuals in your program to check the boxes socially, academically, and athletically.
Thanks, Alex.
Brandon Drum, OU Insider, and then James Hale.
Yeah, Alex, can you talk about Clayton Smith and Danny Stutzman and kind of what they bring to the table for you guys? And then I guess Key Lawrence as well, because those guys seem to, I guess they come in positions that they could be in the rotation fairly early with how the depth is. Is that not correct?
Well, and I think Key's an example. I mean, we call him a transfer, but, I've only been to, I don't know if there's another guy I've recruited. I've been to more basketball games of, or went to a football game, recruiting him for 3 years. And so I guess by rights, he's a transfer because he enrolled in another place last year. But, really looking into this isn't, click on the internet and see what's available. I mean, he did an official visit. I mean, in so many ways, we know more about Key than so many guys that might be signing somewhere else today. So in any event, have an opportunity to compete that way, as he would have, as he signed, if he signed here a year ago, which I tell him he should have. But no, with Clayton, just all he did was continue to get better throughout his career there at Texas High, and got a lot of respect for the football that's played in East Texas. Comes from a good program. Made a major jump junior to senior year, which is so exciting to see. Anytime you're recruiting these guys, one of the things you mentioned is you better play like an Oklahoma Sooner. You say you want to be part of us. You're the responsibility that you have to your high school program and to you and to us is that what you put on film as a senior better look like not a good high school player, but again, the next step is Oklahoma, and he certainly is one of those guys that did it. He's here right now, competes. No, we're awfully excited about Clayton. Certainly in in workouts up until this point, and then based on film, but and a good dude too. So, and then with Danny, I mean, he'll be a guy that joins us this summer. Is some of the best. There's not a whole lot out there that have better high school film than Danny. He does some stuff on the basketball court. He's explosive. He got combine numbers to kind of back up what you see on video. Comes from a great family, and so all those guys. I mean, I think we averaged about 28 guys a game played on defense this last year, and so the proof is that if you're ready, we'll put you out there, and so those guys have a chance to compete.
James Hale, KREF, and then Barry Trammell.
Hey, Alex, Jalen Redmond's opted back in, and I'm curious how he's looked so far. And, he's such a great athlete, but he hasn't practiced very much. And I'm sure you're looking forward to working with him. But what kind of plans do you have for him this season?
Yeah, it's fun to see him around this building. You think you missed him in the moment, and then you see him, and wow, So no, it's and he's in pretty good shape. I wouldn't accuse him of being completely out of shape that way, but some of that is something that, like I said, there's only so much you can do on your own. But no, he's one of the guys. He's one of us. Thrilled to have him back. I mean, his best football continues to be in front of him. I mean, you kind of referenced it, just the amount of time being out, and just to, and everybody's story is different, and he's going to have a heck of one at the end of this deal. But no, thrilled to certainly have him back.
Thanks.
Okay, Barry Trammell, the Oklahoman, and then Kerry Murdoch.
Yeah, Alex, your defense has improved clearly over 2 years, but it seems like defenses across the Big 12 have improved. The discrepancy between offense and defense all over the conference seems to have gotten closer together. Is that something you've seen, that other teams in the Big 12 are playing better defense, and maybe everybody's catching up to these offenses a little bit?
I think from a statistical standpoint, I certainly would agree with you. And then I think some of that is just need based. I think there's a reality when it's what you face on a week in and week out basis. And I think that and I wouldn't claim that Oklahoma is the one that put the major charge in this. And probably give credit to some other programs first. Iowa State, for instance, that kind of put their foot in the ground and said that we're going to develop scheme. We're going to put packages in place. We're going to raise the expectation of the individual program to not just simply be kind of offensive centric in a lot of ways, which then puts pressure on the other programs to do the same. And so I mean we like to think that we're part of that in some ways, certainly moving forward. If you're going to have to play at the high level of defense against Oklahoma, because they're going to play a high level of defense, and so I think there's something to that. I certainly think so. I think every year obviously is different. This one is a little bit more unique from a statistical standpoint, and typically if stats fall on the positive side, you want to champion those and hang on to those, and if they go the other way, you say stats don't matter, and I don't want to do either of those two things, but with and in some ways maybe just because it was only conference or a majority of just conference games this year, maybe it does tell you a little bit more of a story despite people being out and all those things. And so no, I think the verdict's still out that way. I still feel like we're constantly chasing the elite offenses out there, and we certainly have our share in this conference. But like I said, hopefully we can be part of that change.
Kerry Murdoch, Sooner Scoop, and WWLS.
Alex, I hope you can hear me. I think my audio is kind of bad today. But as we saw the transfer portal open up, you would see like a lot of defensive tackles here and there, and you'd be like, wow, I don't know if that guy could really help OU. You guys are just in such a good position on the defensive line, probably more so than in years. But I'm just curious, kind of replacing the guys that you lost going into spring, how much better position do you feel, going into this offseason maybe than, I know you were just building last year, but maybe than you would have been 2 years ago, and how much talent you have to kind of feel those guys?
Yeah, no, I think certainly. I mean, I think if you looked at our board and probably too much in terms of, okay, let's find 11 guys, maybe 2 years ago, and let's try to get to 22. that you feel like could maybe make an impact in the fall. And I think, credit goes to the staff and to the players, where I think we got, certainly some impact from guys past that 22 number. Not at every position necessarily, but probably too much of, from a true competitive standpoint, or playing at a high enough level where you're probably in that, what's our 1.5 as opposed to a true 2 deep, especially in the spring before we added some young guys in here. And maybe as you got through the season, that number increased a little bit. But now as you look at it, I mean, it's exciting to see the names on that board. I mean, but in the end, it will only come to fruition if we do a great job from a development standpoint. And that's, I had the defensive meeting today, in fact, and just that's the message to us as coaches, as well as to the players, is, we like the names up there. We like the potential. And there certainly is more checkers on the board right now as we look at it, but where is it elite, and that's one of the words we're starting to use around here. And that's what it should be. And it's the thumbs up elite, thumbs down if it's not. And that's a high standard. And are we ready to do that? Are we willing to go that far as a defensive side of the ball, and say that's the standard? And that's tough now. And so I cringe a little bit saying that in February, because there's a lot that has to go into that. But you can rattle off a lot more names. You know them, and certainly I know them better than you all. But in terms of what they can be, but there's certainly more names. And you look at our front and all. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people rotated 6, defensive tackles a year ago, 3 defensive ends, three guys a rush linebacker. We got to rotate even more in the secondary, but at least a minimum of a 2 deep. And so many of those guys being back and young guys we're excited about. So believe me, it's a whole lot different in this building right now. The workouts look a whole lot different than they did a couple years ago, where there probably was too much of a gap between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, and certainly between 1 and 3. Now we're seeing that gap shrink.